Hello. In the past I did a video on equally spaced holes in Fusion 360, and I have since come up with a nicer way of doing this, at least in some circumstances. So this will be part 2 of that video. And what I'm trying to build a arrow out of LEDs. So I want an arrow shape, and then on the outline I want this nice constant spacing of LEDs, and that's what I'm going for. So I started with a set of parameters. I know my holes are going to be 12 millimeters. I know my hole spacing is 25 millimeters. The width of the tail, 75, the tail 250, head width, and then I have thickness. So all of these will make sense in a little bit. So we'll start. Did not want to form. We're going to start by creating a sketch, as we always do. And I'm going to start by drawing my arrow. So it's going to come down. This doesn't have to be perfect because, of course, I'm going to be adding constraints. So there's my arrow. And there are a few constraints there. This one I don't want. Horizontal, vertical, I want there. Horizontal, vertical there. Do I need it here? No, I'm already constrained. So now I have some dimensions to add. So this dimension is tail width. Okay, that's the tail width. Then this dimension here is head width. I guess I could call it something else, but that's what I called it. This dimension here, not surprisingly, is also head width. These dimensions here, the ones that come out that direction, head size. And of course, the reason I did these as dimensions is I want to be able to go and change them and change the way things look so that it will just be nicer. I can go modify parameters rather than going back and editing this. And then finally, of course, that is tail length. And we'll do the other one. It's also tail length. And you can see now I have this nice symmetrical arrow shape. And that's what I wanted. Now normally you'd like take this and extrude it, but I'm really just using this as a pattern. So instead of extruding this, what I'm going to do, so I'm going to create another sketch right on this one, and I'm just going to draw a big rectangle. So you can think of this as the board that the holes are going to be drilled in. So we'll finish that. We'll extrude that, whatever my thickness is. And there, now you see I have a board with a pattern. I think the pattern's on top. Okay, so that is exactly what I wanted. And now I want, on top of that, I want to put the holes. So I'm going to start by doing that. Once again, create a sketch. Same guy as this here. This time, I'm going to put a circle. And the circle is going to be hole diameter big. And then I'm going to make it coincident. Okay, so that circle is where I want it. Finish that. And we're going to extrude that circle. I want it the same thickness, so instead of distance, I'm going to do to object. Flip it around to the back. It wants me to cut it, but cut will not work correctly unless they fix things. So I'm going to do a new body. Okay, so there's my first one. So I have that, and now I want to push these all along the path. Okay, so pretty simple. Create pattern, pattern on path. Select the body, which is that guy. Then select the path, which is this. And now it's telling me that's what I want to do. I have spacing that I defined. Let's whole spacing. So there you see, I got 3. Now let's actually go back and edit. And just keep adding these in. And not surprisingly, you see I add these in. Just keep doing that. Let's try 35. How's that? Not quite. Okay, so I got 43. And 43 is pretty good. That's the result I wanted. But now when I'm going to try and change things, what if I look at this and I say, okay, you know, I have 43, but I actually have 50 of these LEDs. So I want to put 50 along this path instead of 43. And that's the whole reason we have parameterization. So let's say, I'm just going to guess, the spacing was 25, and now I'm going to push it to 20. And that, of course, is the problem with my approach. First of all, I don't know how to get to 50 exactly. I guess I could pull up measure and measure the path and then divide by that, and that would probably work. But it's not really using the parameters the way I would like it to use the parameters. And this is where I typically did things, and it was always kind of a pain in the butt to get something that looked the way I wanted it to look, and then I have to keep adjusting things around. And then I realized what the problem was, and the problem was that my base measurement that I was using was millimeters. It was a distance, and that's not really what I want. What I want to do is base things on the number of LEDs along each edge, which I'll express as a count. I'm going to start adding some parameters. And I'm going to add a tail width count. And this is a no units, it's just a number. And I'm going to say 3. So I had tail width count, I have tail length. Tail length count, also just a number, it's going to be 10. Head width, so head width count, number 2. And then finally head size count, and I think we're going to choose 4, just as an arbitrary number here. Okay, so that is defining the dimensions, but obviously I can't use those in the drawing. But I can make the drawing dependent on those. So tail width becomes whole spacing times tail width count. Tail length, whole spacing times tail length count. And the same with head width. And then head size. So those are now all derived from the counts I have down here and the actual spacing I have. And I'm going to do one more thing that I think is pretty cool. I'm going to add another one called total count. And this one you have to understand how the object is structured. So if we're trying to figure out what the total is the total number of LEDs is the tail width count plus, there are 2 sides, so it's 2 times tail length count plus 2 times head width count plus 2 times head count, head size count. And what we see is that's 35. So we can look at this and say, hey, 35 is the total number we have. Okay. Now, what you notice now, we see that's a beautiful design. There's one more thing I want to change. I want to go into Edit Pattern on Path. And you remember I actually entered 43 here? Okay, 43 is actually the wrong number. They're actually overlapping here now. What I want, they're overlapping because I changed some numbers. Total count. So now, Unlike before, I have a design that is totally driven by the numbers. You notice I have a problem here. These two holes are overlapped. That isn't going to work. But there's a really easy way to fix this. Just go in, change parameters, hit size count, let's push that up to 7. Okay. Notice that. I want these to be a little wider. That's head count. Change the parameters. Head count was 2. Let's do that to 3. So it's wider, and I think the arrow itself should be a little longer. So we'll go here once more. What's our total? Our total is 43. I want to keep it less than 50, so we will add 3 on each side. So tail length will go to 13. And there we have it. This gives us a much, much nicer way of figuring out where these go. And it's a little harder to define, but once I have them defined, it's really easy to play around. And, oh, I should have shown this. Obviously, if I go in here, change parameters, I decide, hey, those are spaced a little too closely. Let's go to 23 millimeters. And where that would have messed up before, we notice it doesn't really mess up at all. Everything just auto scales based upon what we want. So once we'd have that, we would want to actually convert these to real holes, just for sake of completeness. Combine. Okay, all of those are the tool bodies. That's the target body. We're going to be doing a cut. And there's my final design. I guess I can turn off the sketch. And there's the final design. And that now behaves exactly the way I want it to. The only caveat is obviously when I selected all of these, I was actually selecting them. And if I did a modification so there were more holes, I'd have to go back and change this part. That's part 2 on how to create equidistant holes in Fusion 360, specifically how to create them for designs like this. I hope you enjoyed this.